Ah! Carry the 3. The fuck is a bolt thrower? Alright guys, welcome to another episode of Young James Does Death Metal. We're on episode 2, and today we are talking about the IVth Crusade by Bolt Thrower. And to start off, I've definitely heard of Bolt Thrower, and I've heard a few songs, but other than that, I've never really listened to them. And so this is pretty much totally fresh to me, except for a few listens here and there. So it was kind of interesting to hear this, especially coming out of cattle decapitation. It's coming out of that, because they're pretty different albums, pretty different sounds. So this is kind of a cool one. So we'll start off with the first 3 things. So the activities I was doing when I was listening to this album, I listened to it a couple times when I was out for runs. I listened to it once when I was driving, and then once when I was just kind of hanging out, watching Netflix or whatever I was doing at the time. And then I actually kind of went back through 4 or 5 of those songs that I really enjoyed and gave those an extra listen too. What beer was I drinking? Well, we got a nice Coors Light here. And described in a few words, groovy, dude. So let's start talking about it. As I already mentioned, it's very different from cattle decapitation. Cattle decapitation obviously sounds more modern, and it kind of has a little bit more deathcore to it and not quite as much straight death metal. Although I would say that this album doesn't scream death metal to me. I don't know enough about the genre to be able to tell you whether or not it is death metal, but it doesn't when I think of death metal, I'm not gonna be able to get over that. Bolt Thrower isn't the first thing that I think of when you say death metal. This sound isn't what I think of, but it's different from cattle decapitation, but it's still really good, and I really enjoyed it. It's more groove-oriented, I would say, but it definitely has some thrashier, faster parts to it. And I'm a big sucker for a good groove, so I'm all about grooving along to my jams. So that's cool to hear. The drumming is probably my favorite part of this album. It's super tight. It sounds awesome. All the fills and things that he does just really hold it together and keep it interesting for me. And I think the drumming might be my favorite part of the whole album. So overall, I really enjoyed it. It was a fun listen. My favorite song was Ritual, which seemed to be the most varied to me because it kind of had a thrashier riff, but it also was kind of groovy and slammy and deathy and metally. But my favorite riff on the album was probably from As the World Burns. It was like a slower riff, and it just grooved really hard. I really enjoy that riff in all of metal, to be honest. Not just because of this album, but I'll probably go back to that song just to hear that riff, because I think that riff sounds super fucking tight. And then some honorable mentions. I already mentioned As the World Burns, Embers, and Spearhead, and there were a few more. The opener, The IVth Crusade, is a pretty decent tune, so I liked that. And overall, I enjoyed most of the songs on the album. I could do without the outro. I'm not a really big fan of intros and outros, and the last song on this album is just kind of whatever. I listened to it the first time, I skipped it every time after that. I don't really need that kind of outro. I don't see why bands do that, but that's just personal taste. So with all that good stuff that I said, I have to mention one bad thing, and it's kind of significant. So it gets to be kind of samey. The riffs kind of blend together, and they don't really change it up a whole lot, except for in songs like Ritual and As the World Burns. Other than that, I mean, they just like, it seems like they take one riff and they play it for a minute and a half. And then they switch to a different riff and play that for a minute and a half. And they just kind of beat you down with the same riff over and over again. And eventually got to the point where it's like, okay, I'm kind of getting bored of this. Can we switch it up here? Can we do something different? And they're capable of writing varied songs. I mean, go listen to Ritual. Why couldn't they write more shit like Ritual? Ritual fucking bangs, dude. And so I think that's kind of my biggest gripe about the whole, it is my biggest gripe about the whole thing, is I don't understand why they just take one riff and play it for 2 minutes straight. But maybe I'm just because I'm a young dude and I get bored easily. I don't know. And I also think maybe I'm anticipating too much because this is a beginner's list. You know, this is how to get someone to dive deeper into death metal. And so here I am maybe expecting some more extreme stuff. And this obviously isn't that extreme. This is just kind of to get you into the groove of listening to death metal. At least that's kind of how I see it. So then the three major parts that I want to hit about the album. Production. It's grimy. It's dirtier than Cattle Decapitation, but it still holds up. It still sounds great. Everything cuts through. The guitars have like a fuzziness to them that kind of makes them sound a little more dirty, but you can still understand what's going on. The guitars still sound great. I kind of love that little bit of fuzziness, and the bass still cuts through all that fuzziness too. You can still pick the bass out pretty easily. The drums are mixed fantastically. I love how the drums are really shine, and whoever's on the kit behind this band, I mean, he's fucking, at least on this album anyways, whoever was on this album, he was on his shit. I mean, that sounds good. Like I said, that was probably my favorite thing about the album, is I listened to the drumming a lot, which is kind of weird for me because normally I'm really oriented towards the guitar side of things. So I already kind of touched on it. Song structure. It kind of seems like we got like a speed versus groove thing going on here. So they like to, throw in like this really thrashy kind of speed-oriented riff, and then they'll slow it down and kind of break it down and hit you with a really good groove. And then it's just kind of like a battle back and forth, which, even though I said the songs aren't varied, or, the riffs aren't varied, I should say. The riffs aren't varied. The songs are varied, it seems like, because they go back and forth from groove to thrash to, mid-tempo stuff, kind of. And it's just really the riffs, excuse me. It's the riffs that I really have a gripe with, because it just seems like they just use too many of the same types of riffs for too long during each song. So that's how I feel about the song structure. Vocals, there's really not a whole lot of variation here, but that isn't bad. I think the vocalist sounds good. He's got like some good guttural type sounds going on there, and I think that does fine. He doesn't really change it up much, and he doesn't need to. It's kind of the typical death metal vocals that I would expect when I think of death metal. The singer for Bolt Thrower is kind of, I wouldn't say run of the mill, but they're not extravagantly different, and they're also just, they don't suck either. They're just good. Overall, I'm going to give this album a rating of 7. And I hope that's not too low. I don't know. Maybe I'm fucked in the head, guys. Maybe this is a really fucking good album and I'm just an idiot, which is entirely possible because I am an idiot. But I'm just going to give it a 7. It doesn't really make me want to go back and listen to the album, except for maybe a couple parts and riffs. But it does make me excited to hear what's next on the list. So, as far as getting someone interested into death metal and trying to help them along in their journey into death metal, it nails it there, because I might not necessarily want to go back to the IVth Crusade, but it definitely makes me excited to hear what's next on the list. I think I'm already ready for more extreme shit. So we'll see how that goes. Watch, the next album I listen to, I could fucking hate it because it's too extreme because I'm a little bitch. But I guess we'll find out. So yeah, there's the IVth Crusade, the second installment of Young James Does Death Metal. Up next, I'm not going to tell you, because it's a secret. If I tell you, I'd have to kill you. So, but Yep, we got 13 more to go, so up next is lucky number 13, and I will catch you guys on that one. Stay young and stay metal.
Turn around. I'm social eyes.